Everybody, in this video we're going to be talking a lot about what we could expect for January. I know I made a video a few days ago about who will see snow in January, but this video is going to be more in depth with talking about stuff that I haven't even mentioned on this channel yet. Is that PNA, AO, EPO, and the event, the stratospheric warming event. Yes, it sounds, warming, so it sounds like, maybe it's just going to warm up. It's actually the exact opposite. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll explain in just a few moments. So let's start out with the AO. All right, this is a few maps that I have of the AO, EPO, and the PNA, and then we got the stratosphere, like a model, but it's on a slide so we can look at each thing. All right, so the AO. Higher than normal pressures over the polar region and lower than normal pressure about 45 degrees north latitude. The negative phase. So this is why I put the negative phase more about it, is because we're heading into a negative phase with the AO. Clearly right here you can tell a negative decline right there, and then does rise a bit, but then it declines and then averages out. So does mean good for snow lovers, does mean good for Arctic outbreaks and stuff. This is just one piece to the whole event that's could occur. So higher than normal pressures, like I said, over the polar region, and lower than normal pressures near the 45 degrees north latitude. The negative phase allows cold Arctic air to plunge into the Midwest, Eastern US, and Western Europe. So what the AO does pretty much helps that polar air from the Arctic to be pushed down into the United States and outwards. And I'm going to be showing you guys a map with the stratosphere warming, because all this is going to be part of that stratospheric warming event. So that's what the AO, and you can, and I know I don't have any really timelines, but this only goes out to 2 weeks, 2 to maybe 3 weeks of January, and especially that first week of January, we are going to be at its lowest, near -3, potentially, maybe even more. And then it does rise back into that -2, but not exactly where it was, near about negative 0.80, we'll say, where it started. So, and then it does go back down and pretty much slightly averages down or stay at around -2, -1 with the AO. So when it's positive, it means not so much of cold air coming down to the United States, Europe, and not being pushed. All right. That's when it's positive. The negative phase is good, and it helps for the snow lovers and colder air to come down into the United States, not just the United States, but outwards from the Arctic. So now we're going to look at EPO. Nothing too much with this one. EPO is widespread colder air, polar, Central, and Eastern America. So widespread colder Arctic air into the polar centrals and Eastern America. And this goes out about 2 weeks into January. So you can tell pretty much where it starts is from up here, and then it goes down a little bit, and then it rises a bit, and then goes down even more. And then, yes, it does increase. And one thing I would say, if one of these, like EPO, the PNA, or the AO, goes up, it doesn't mean, now we're not going to have cold air, we're not going to have snow. This is it's not rare, but it hasn't happened in quite a few years where all these oscillations go negative at once. All right, like last year with that one blizzard or two. Yes, we had like the EPO maybe a little high and the PNA low, and it wasn't really matching. But this is that one time where we haven't seen it in quite a few years, with the EPO, AO, and the PNA to all be negative at once, and a stratospheric warming event. this is all going to add into the pretty much the polar vortex breaking off of the Arctic Circle and expanding outwards. We had this happen a few years ago, and certain of these stratospheric warming events is colder than others. Some is more historic, some is more of your average or maybe not as bad as they could be. All right. So that's what the EPO is. And you can tell it does go down, and yes, it does rise. That's a little bit more farther out, but we'll see. Then we look at the PNA. PNA, very interesting. You can tell right here. I don't think I meant to put that. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. So this is your PNA forecast. And this only goes out about into the second week of January. And like I said, it's supposed to drop. We go from 3, and then that just continues to drop, go down, and it does bottom out for a bit, for maybe about a few days or so. And then it in the long term it does have it increasing back into the 3s, but that's a little bit more farther out. We're just going to take it week by week because this can always change, and we'll probably have another update of this in the next coming days. But that is your PNA. So PNA is, oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. More ridging in the west of the U.S. and dipping in the eastern part, and help the Arctic air to invade the United States, pretty much. So it's another Pacific North oscillation where it's more higher pressures, ridging out in the west, dipping in the northeast and central and the eastern part. So yes, PNA negative. The EPO goes negative and then rises. We'll see about that. Um, colder and colder air. All right, and then you got the AO going negative too. So all these will align with the AO, EPO, and PNA to all be negative at once. It is possible into going into January. That means extreme cold temperatures are possible. Snow tracks are possible. Snowstorms are possible. Um, and we have to see. And now for the biggest and finality of them all is stratospheric warming event. This actually hasn't happened in a very long time. This is a very it hasn't happened in a very long time. Okay, it's not rare, but it is. So you can tell I have January 5th, January 7th, January 11th. Yes, it looks like, oh my god, it's red, white, black, and then purple and all that. And that looks like, oh, that's Justin, that's warm air. What are you talking about? But that's not exactly how it is. So let's just first understand what a stratospheric warming event is. A break off from the polar vortex that can lead into Arctic outbreaks and very large snowstorms. And no, the red is not. Let me actually fix that. I did not mean to put a P there. No, the red you see is way up in the atmosphere. Yes. So that red that you're seeing, yes, it's warm, but that's thousands and thousands of feet up. That's in the stratosphere. And usually the stratosphere is supposed to be way below freezing, but the stratosphere could be getting up to near 30 degrees Celsius. So very warm, but everything that in the stratosphere that's freezing, like those below -20s and stuff, is actually going to translate to the surface. And I have it on here. So pretty much think of this the opposite. That red is pretty much the polar vortex. All right, that's pretty much the polar vortex. You can tell by January 5th that starts invading Canada and northern United States. By January 7th, that just continues to invade, and January 11th, all North America is dealing with this. And yes, it looks like, oh, that seems like warming, but that's actually the polar vortex entering. So that is a very big possibility. And this stratosphere warming event actually takes a very long time. It could take up to weeks to a few months to enter in the picture with the models. All right. So what we're seeing with the EPO, AO, PNA, that is going to help, but that's going to be more ahead of the stratosphere warming. So we're going to have two events back to back pretty much, maybe of them overlapping just a bit. All right. But that is pretty much a break off from the polar vortex that can lead into Arctic outbreaks and very large snowstorms. All right. That's what all this means, the PNA, the AO, EPO, and stratosphere warning. If you have any questions, comment down below and I'll love to answer them. All right. That's just a bit more of what people been talking about if you've been seeing their posts on Twitter or just in YouTube talking about the PNA, AO, EPO, in the stratospheric warming. All right, that's just a little bit more about what to expect for January. This is going to happen for January. So that does help that snow. So now we're going to take a look at some of the models. And this is going to be very interesting to be looking at. So we're looking at the European here. And we're going to look at all three models and see what they are saying. All right. So we continue to go. So that's that storm for today. And then that continues to move. We get that little bit of a snow slash little low. You tell, yes, that's very cold up in the air. But that does move out. And then we get a little bit of a clipper system. This is possible that we could have a clipper system that maybe brings a few inches of slushy snow across the Great Lakes and a bit of the Northeast. It is possible. I haven't really looked into that, but that's a little bit more down the road, so we don't have to worry about that. But that does help the Arctic. And then you can tell precip to the south, colder air to the north. That is a good setup. All right. That does on the Euro, in fact, brings potentially snow for Alabama and Mississippi with that colder air. It is possible. All right. This is a little bit farther out, but it is possible. We have to look into this. But this is what I mean for January. It could start out with a bomb, and even into northern Georgia can get some, and even South Carolina and closing onto the coast, getting some of that freezing precip, I like to call it. So freezing rain, ice, pretty much a mixed bag is very possible, and then that moves out. All right, we continue, and yes, it looks like it's a little bit warmer. Yes, it is, but then you can tell another Arctic blast, another clipper system comes into the Northeast and introduce that cold air again. You can tell we have more storm systems, but by the end of the run, very cold and very interesting. So the year is hinting on quite a few blasts of snow and colder air to start out January with the Euro model. All right, that's very important. And now I want to take a look at let's see what I want to take a look at. I don't even know. Oh, I did not even mean to click on that. Upper air. Let's just look around. No. Let's just look at temperatures. Oh. So these are the temperatures of the Euro model. And you can tell, yes, we you can tell already colder air starts making. But after this storm, things will cool down quite a bit. And look at these daytime temperatures too. Some daytime temps could only get up to the 40s, even in the southeast here. But you can tell as each day keeps going on, it gets colder and colder for many people. But if we go by the end of the run, look, You're really talking about daytime temperatures being in the upper 30s to even low 30s. Like, look, this is by the end of the run, and boom, you got single digits, teens showing up. So, a very cold start to January looking with the European model. Potentially snowy too. If those snow events does happen, then yes, that will help to increase. That's only one model, all right? So now we're going to take a look at the Canadian model, all right? Very important model to take a look at. We're going to look at the Euro, GFS, and Canadian. So we're pretty much going backwards. So we already looked at the Euro, and that all lines up with what we were talking about with the PNA, AO, EPO. Colder and potentially snowier. Now we look at the Canadian. After that storm, yes, we are going to have maybe another late effects event. We might make a separate video on that. We might. I'll think about it. But then you can tell precip goes by in the southern, and we get these little shots of snow. Maybe not as aggressive as the Euro. But you can tell once again that southern storm, snow in Texas, snow near New Orleans, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi potentially, and then that goes up and turns into a coastal low for pretty much Canada. Then you get another Arctic blast that tries and meets up with that. Just a little late. So doesn't get our snowstorm there. That could change. All right. Then we look and boom, we get another low to start riding along the Gulf. And then it probably will ride up the East Coast. You got that colder air, and look, you got another um so let's just take a look at the pattern here. So you got another cold front and you got another low. Probably gonna track like that, and that's gonna meet up with that. You got the colder air. So this is what I'm saying. Snow year potentially into January and colder is gonna be a very big thing. And that's what the Euro's been showing. And if we have time, I'll look at the latest Euro model if it comes out in time. All right. We look at the temperatures out of that system. Yes, it does. The temperatures really do cool down quite a bit in the upper 30s, low 40s, and even nine times too. Look at some of these nine times near the -5 degrees mark, even the freezing line getting all the way down to Florida. So very cold nighttime temps, and definitely towards the end, you can tell very cold temps. All right, and even those daytimes barely making it out of the freezing mark. So definitely something to keep on a watch. Canadian and Euro all lining up with much colder temperatures heading into January and a few shots of snow. Now we're going to look at the GFS. And I'm warning you, I'm only going out 10 days because the Euro went out 10 days and the GFS goes out 384. But after 10 days, it's very uncertain. So we're just going to take a look up to that 240-hour mark. So yes, that system goes through colder temperatures. Yes, you get maybe another type of precip storm here, a little bit more north, but even Georgia sees some of that snow right there. And then boom, that turns into a coastal low and then rides away, and it doesn't really comes anything. But let me just make sure I'm all good. This is only 180. That system we will have to watch out for. I'm not expecting too much out of it as of right now, but we continue. We get another type of low that tries and rides up the East Coast. We get another cold front. Boom. With that potentially snow in the mornings up to maybe an inch or two, all right? We continue. That doesn't really become anything. Then we get another shot of very cold air. Then we go, boom, 240. And there it is. Ridging out in the west. And ridging out in the west, cooling in the there, and then we got another low right there. All right. I'm not going really, I might go out for y'all, but this is very uncertain. All right. Good luck. Um, every run's been different. You can tell that southern system doesn't, and then we get this weird inland northeast inland storm, but last run was looking like this. The other one was looking like this. So it's very uncertain after you get those 10 days out, and that's why I don't want to really like looking at it. That's why I like only going 240. But that's your forecast, at least in the next 10 days. How much snow you could be expecting in the next 10 days? Not a whole bunch, I would say. Maybe some snow. Everyone's seeing maybe up to 1 to 3 inches. Some parts seeing up to 6 to 12 inches. Nothing too much. This is up to January 6th. All right. The Canadian too. Nothing too much. An average 1 to 3, maybe in some spots up to 12. And the Euro doesn't have the snow, sadly, the forecast. But we can look at one more model before we go, and that's the Icon. Icon only goes out 180, so why not look at it? It doesn't even go out near the 10 days. It only goes out like 5 days. But you could tell we see the same type of thing. Very shrink low in the Gulf. Doesn't even bother anyone. Maybe rain from Florida. Another Clipper system, and by the 180, you could tell very cold air and another storm in the Gulf. And that's going to be another story for another day. All right. So that's pretty much everything going into that point. All right. The GEFS, I guess we can look at if you guys really like. We just go out. This one I'll go out 340, but there it is. Very cold temperatures, night times, daytimes, but looking a lot colder with the ensembles and the global models. All right, and potentially snowier. So that's gonna wrap it up with this video, and we'll talk again later. But thank you for everything here. Please check out my other videos too. Check out the channel. Just check it out. But I hope you guys enjoy, and ask me in the comments below with any questions you got. Bye.